What's poppin', family? Welcome to episode 202 of The Genius Life. Here we go.
That's the needs of the body and brain don't stop at food. There's so much more to the genius life. There's so much more. That's the genius life.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Genius Life. I'm your host, Max Lugavere, a filmmaker, health and science journalist, and author of the New York Times bestselling book, Genius Foods and The Genius Life. I'm so thrilled to introduce you guys to today's guests. That's right, guests, plural. We have such a dynamic duo in the house today. Introducing Joe and Serenity Carr. Joe and Serenity are the brains behind the wildly successful Serenity Kids, my favorite brand of convenient, high-quality, nutrient-dense baby food. Joe and Serenity started Serenity Kids because they wanted to help create a thriving planet where children are fed, raised, and educated to be healthy, happy, and creative human beings. Their recipes mimic the macronutrients of breast milk, offering the right balance of fat, protein, and carbohydrates for babies over 6 months old. In today's episode, we discuss which key nutrients are missing from most conventional baby food. Joe and Serenity also share why you should feed your baby meat and when to start. They also discuss ways to encourage your baby to develop a sophisticated palate by offering a variety of tastes and textures. We talk about tips to save time and money by shopping bulk and batch cooking. And then finally, we chat about what toddler milk is and could it be the right choice for your child? As you guys know, I don't have any children of my own, but I do aspire to one day have progeny that I can call my own. And so I found this episode incredibly interesting. There's such a cool science on how we can and should feed our little ones today. And I'm so happy that Joe and Serenity have chosen this path to embrace that science versus just accepting the sweet tasting products containing sugary fruits that are on the market now. I had a blast hosting this conversation with Joe and Serenity, and I have no doubt that you are going to enjoy listening to it, whether you have kids or not. This episode is brought to you in part by our friends at Paleo Valley. You guys know the love that I feel deep down in my soul for Paleo Valley meat sticks. Well, Paleo Valley makes another product that I haven't given as much love over the past couple months on this podcast, but I love it nonetheless, and that is Paleo Valley's grass-fed organ complex. I love that they've made getting in your organ meats easy, because what does everybody know about organ meats? They have funky tastes and textures, but they are nonetheless loaded with nutrition. And in one serving of Paleo Valley's grass-fed organ complex, you get 2,700 milligrams of grass-fed liver, freeze-dried. You get 540 milligrams of heart, and you get 360 milligrams of kidney. Each of those organs has different and unique benefits. For example, heart is a great source of CoQ10 in the form that is naturally plug and play to your own body, because, you are a mammal. And so these carnonutrients, they're just so amazing. Liver, fantastic source of copper, of vitamin B12, of choline. I love that you can just pop these pills and forget about it without having to go and buy organ meats at the supermarket. So great. And that's just like the cherry on the sundae or the icing on the cake, because Paleo Valley also happens to make my favorite beef sticks on the planet, as I've mentioned. If you'd like to try anything that Paleo Valley makes, including these organ supplements, which are great, and I have been taking them every day, all you have to do is head over to paleovalley.com/max or use promo code MAX15 at checkout. MAX15 at checkout, you'll get 15% off, which is the highest discount that you'll find anywhere for these super high quality products. Try Paleo Valley's beef sticks or their organ supplement. I'm a huge fan. paleovalley.com/max or code MAX15 at checkout. You won't be sorry. All right, guys. Well, we're just seconds away from this chat with Joe and Serenity Carr. Really wonderful conversation. Very eye-opening, too, for parents. If you know parents, if you one day aspire to be a parent, definitely listen to this episode of the show, take notes, and make a mental note of Serenity, which is a great product that I happen to love. Also, you guys, we have a discount for Serenity Kids. If you use code GENIUS at checkout, that's myserenitykids.com. That's myserenitykids.com and enter GENIUS at checkout. You're going to get 20% off of your first one-time order plus free shipping. Again, that is myserenitykids.com and code GENIUS for 20% off. I'll give you guys a reminder later in the episode because I'm sure you're going to be blown away by the ethos behind their company and are going to want to take part and support. So Thanksgiving down the pike. Hope you guys are getting ready. Hope you guys are staying warm and healthy and have lots of love around you. I know I do. Very lucky. Before jumping into the episode with Joe and Serenity, I also wanted to share this thoughtful review that someone from our Genius Life fam wrote on the Apple Podcast app. They wrote, "I've been loving your podcast for about a year or so. When my dad was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia, I bought Genius Foods as well, as it has given me so many tips and so much advice for keeping my brain healthy. I even bought a copy for my parents to read, and they've incorporated some of the tips and recipes into their daily life. Thank you for what you do." Well, first off, thank you, HDJDJK. There's like a bajillion random letters that make up this person's username. But I really appreciate the message. And also, I'd like to give you a free copy of my follow-up to Genius Foods, The Genius Life. So shoot us a DM on Instagram at The Genius Life Podcast. If your username on Apple Podcasts, on the Apple Podcast app begins with HDJD, we would love to get you hooked up. I know firsthand, the pain and struggle that it is to deal with a sick loved one. So the only advice that I can give you is just make sure that you build in time for self-care. Be kind to yourself. Guys, I love every review, positive or constructive, on the Apple Podcast app. I read them all. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts. New episodes every Wednesday. We also have a YouTube channel that is just bursting at the seams with epic content. So head over there, youtube.com/MaxLugavere. You'll get the Genius Life coming at you from all directions. Who doesn't want that? And now, without further ado, let's jump right into episode 202 with the wonderful team behind Serenity Kids, Joe and Serenity Carr. Here we go. Joe and Serenity Carr, welcome to the Genius Life. How you guys doing?
So great.
Awesome.
Excited to be here.
I'm pumped to have you guys. I'm a big fan of your guys' products, so much so that I recently had the opportunity to invest in it, which is hearing those words come out of my mouth is kind of mind-blowing that I'm able
You're an investor. Yay.
Yeah. No, it's insane. But, I like to put my money where my mouth is, and I like to support products that I believe in, that are trying to make the world and the food environment a better place. And so thank you guys first, off the bat, for doing what you guys do.
And thank you for investing. I mean, for us, it works really well to have backers that really get it. They're not going to try to get us to cut costs, to, downgrade our quality or anything like that, or change the recipes. And that's really been beneficial to our business model, and it's helping us keep babies healthier. So thank you for that.
Love that. Yeah. A small contribution, I'm sure, but, relative to everybody else that you've got involved, but happy to do it because, I'm not a parent, but I've done sort of a survey of the infant and toddler food landscape, and what is out there on the market, on the shelves, is really kind of disheartening from the standpoint of somebody who one day wants to bring a child into the world. So yeah, I'd love to know the backstory, like the origin story of Serenity Kids. How'd you guys get started?
Well, let's see, we could go way far back. So I was a sick little kid. I was always taking antibiotics for ear, nose, and throat things. I ate garbage. I ate the processed food of the 80s, lots of Intamins and Cheese Whiz and crackers and things like that, just really low nutrition foods, and was always sick growing up. And then as an adult, really started suffering with digestive issues. We didn't know about leaky gut in the 80s. Now we do. So it took me a while to really recover from that. And it was my dad's suggestion to change my diet. My doctor didn't suggest that. The doctor gave me pills, but my dad said, maybe try this paleo diet thing, see if that helps. So I've been doing that for the last 11 years, and food has been a huge part of my healing journey. And when we started talking about start having a family someday, I started looking into what was on the baby food aisle, and it was more than disheartening for me. For me, it was criminal, absolutely criminal, that we feed garbage to our children. And I'll let Joe tell a little bit of his story.
Yeah, I'm autistic. I wasn't diagnosed as a kid, so I had a lot of social challenges, also a lot of physical issues, being very sensitive to foods, but was on a personal growth journey, always trying to be better, figuring out how to integrate my autism in adulthood, and diet became a big piece of that for me as well. So when I met Serenity, I fell in love with paleo diet, and with her at the same time, she introduced me to paleo, and that was like a really huge shift in my physiology. Switch, cutting out the inflammatory foods, the sugars, the grains, the things that I were just irritating me, and focusing on more nutrient density. And I've always wanted to have children. I drew pictures of my future babies when I was 5. So I dug those up the other day. So always wanted to have kids. So when we started planning family, we looked for foods. It was just one of the first things we did. And we're very frustrated with what we found. And decided we wanted to make it better.
Yeah. I mean, originally it was just, I started looking for foods that were out there. I didn't see foods that represented what my diet was. So I was like, well, maybe babies are supposed to eat apple juice and rice cereal. I don't know. So I launched into I call it my summer of nerddom. I spent the summer of 2016 reading everything I could about infant nutrition, listening to podcasts, reading people's blogs. Conveniently, a bunch of my kind of health mentors had kids in the last few years. So I was reading about what they were feeding their kids, and every single one of them was making compromises on nutrition for convenience sake. So I knew that there was a white space there. And Joe was in the process of looking for a business to start with a product. He had read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek and thought that was a pretty cool idea, how to scale a business selling products instead of services. And we did a study. You want to tell them about the study?
We looked into baby foods on the aisle. We actually had a virtual assistant put all 250 organic baby foods into a spreadsheet and looked at all their macronutrient profiles. And those results were quite astounding. They had an average of 9 grams of sugar per pouch. Some had 15 to 20 grams of sugar, right? So, and for a baby, 9 grams doesn't sound that much, but that's like 90 grams of sugar for you or me.
That is zero, right?
And their babies are eating 2 or 3 of these a day. So that's like a Snickers bar worth of sugar that they're eating in these fruit pouches that people think are healthy. It's organic fruit, sounds good, but super, super sugary. But even more concerning the sugar was the lack of fat. Less than 2% had less than 1% had 2 grams or more of fat. So almost no fat on the aisle. And Serenity's Summer of Nerddom determined that babies need 30 grams of fat a day. That's like 300 grams of fat for you or me. We'd be having to down Kerrygold all day long to eat the amount of fat a baby needs. And the aisle just had 0 fat, and fats are so important building blocks for brain and spine and all these, nutritional developments. And then there were no animal products. Less than 4% of baby foods contain meat. None of that meat was well sourced. It was all just, whatever factory farmed mystery meat. And, so we were like, man, this is tragic because babies need meat. Meat's one of the most important first foods. Breast milk is an animal product.
Absolutely.
Breast milk is mostly fat. So it's like babies need fat and animal products first and foremost. They don't need fruit. They don't need grains. And yet all the aisle was a bunch of fruit and grain. So we're like, this is crazy. There's a massive room for upgrading macronutrients of baby food here.
And I just started feeling like my heart was breaking for these babies because they don't get to choose what they eat. Their parents pick for them. And if I had not been such a sick kid, if I had not had a dad suggest changing my diet, if I had not had the path that I had, if I had not been courageous enough to ignore my doctor's advice to take this pill every day, I would be one of those parents. I'd go to the baby food aisle. I would say organic banana, and I would buy the crap out of that stuff because I would think in my naive heart that food companies have my baby's best interest in mind, and they don't. And it's heartbreaking to kind of admit that and see that, but it's also been really great for our lives. We've started this cool company. We have the best jobs we've ever had. We're making real change in the world. And frankly, we feed these to our daughter. So our daughter is growing up much healthier than she would have if we hadn't started the company. Mm-hmm. So it's benefited us in huge ways.
Yeah, they want, these legacy children's food companies, they want big margins. That's what they want.
That's right.
They don't want the best quality ingredients. You were talking about fat. I bet you probably don't want them to add more fat because what are the kinds of fats that they're going to add realistically? They're probably going to just pump those packages full of soybean oil and
that's true.
All kinds of junk. Who knows?
That's right. It's already in there. Any meaningful fat is really just in infant formula because it has to be, right? And so they use mostly industrial. In fact, I think I have not found a formula that does not use industrial seed oils aside from ours. that actually anywhere.
Europe or the US.
Yeah, I bought some in Europe, and you're right, the fats were not good. So that's something that we're really, really proud of. And when we first started the company, we started the company 5 years ago, and then we launched products 3 years ago. And we had so many conversations about, is the world ready for us to talk about fat on our package? Our mission was to bring fat back to the baby food aisle. It used to be on the baby food aisle in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They were eating bone broths and bone marrows and liver and onions and all kinds of baby foods that were actually really healthy. And then we got away from that, and now we're bringing it back. But we decided, for the time being, at least the first few years, we were going to just sort of quietly deliver fat on the nutrition facts panel in the ingredient list. We were not going to just, proclaim it and scream it on the front of our package, because we weren't sure the world was ready for it yet. And now it's getting there. It's really fun to see when I read our product reviews from moms and dads, oh, this is the only one that has any healthy fats, or I love that it has olive oil, or I love that it has avocado oil, or for our formula product, I really like their wide variety of fats. And so the world is changing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Fat is back.
Fat is back. It's so important. I mean, I've talked about the fact that the adult brain accounts, the resting metabolism of the adult brain accounts for about 25% of an adult's resting metabolic rate.
Wow.
That's a quarter. But in a newborn, that number, that proportion shoots up to 70, 80, 90%.
Wow.
The brain is just undergoing such tremendous growth and organization. And so that's why nutrition is so important for the developing brain, and especially those fats, because those fats become the building blocks that the organism, that the neonate uses to construct nervous tissue, the tissue that comprises the nervous system. Hey guys, quick pause. Are you on a low carb, gluten-free, or grain-free way of eating and lament that you can't have bread in your life, or donuts, or even baklava, one of my favorite Greek confectionery products? Well, I have the most amazing solution for you guys. A couple of years ago, I discovered Misfits Bakehouse, which I've gotten to know them over the years. They make some of the best, if not the best, I'm not even being hyperbolic here, bakery products I've ever had in my life. Whether it's their bagels or their loaf bread or their focaccia. Oh my God. I love to cut up pieces of their focaccia and eat it with poached eggs. It's divine. Or their baklava, which they've single-handedly revolutionized. I don't know anybody else making grain-free baklava that's as delicious as grain-full baklava. It's so good. They have donuts. They have, just a ton of great products, like their pumpkin pie. They have all these like Thanksgiving goodies. So freaking good. I'm so excited to welcome them to the Genius Life as sponsors of the show. If you'd like to revolutionize your way of eating and welcome back bread and bakery products to the table, you have to check out Misfits Kitchen. The website, conveniently, is misfits.kitchen. There's no .com. It's just misfits.kitchen. And if you use code GeniusLife at checkout, you're going to get 15% off site-wide. Again, geniuslife.com will get you 15% off of everything at misfits.kitchen. Definitely try their baklava. They even have like a hazelnut baklava, which tastes like Nutella all over. I'm telling you guys, this stuff is mind-blowing, okay? They ship nationwide. And again, some of the best bakery products I've ever had. Just take my word for it and try them out. Misfits.kitchen. It's also minority-owned, small business based up in San Francisco, but again, they ship nationally. Misfits.kitchen. Use code GeniusLife. You're going to get 15% off site-wide. I love this stuff, and I know you will too.
There's no better fat than meat fat. Animal fats are, I can tell just from my own body, but with our daughter and with all the studies and the anthropological data on the role of animal products in developing the human brain over time. It's just such an important thing to have fatty cuts of meat available to babies. And that was what was really the basis of our initial recipes, were the fattiest, well-sourced meat we could find mixed with vegetables, because they do need carbs. Breast milk is half carbs, half fat. So, focusing on vegetable carbs as opposed to fruit carbs, which are just sugar, but really getting those quality veggies in there were the basis for the recipes. But really, the question we get all the time is, when can my baby eat meat? When can I eat these? When should I start giving her meat? We're like, as soon as you give her food, like first thing that people start with fruits and grains. And it's completely the opposite of what a baby's digestive system is ready for and what they need nutritionally.
Absolutely. And like omega-3 fats, preformed omega-3 fats, choline. I mean, I can't imagine. I feel so bad for children because, as you mentioned, they don't get to pick their food, right? You see these headlines all the time come out about people putting their babies on, these extreme diets, vegetarian diets, vegan diets, basically, basically like, letting their ideology trump the biology of their progeny, which is to me so tragic. I mean, we've seen what comes of that, and it's not good.
It's not good. And I think it's so sad. And, those parents mean well, right? They're trying to do what's best for their kid. And they just, in my opinion, don't understand all of the data. And so that's one of our other big missions is how do we continually answer the question, when can I feed my kid meat? And also, why should I feed my kid meat? How do we educate parents in a way that is not shameful, that is clear and simple, just so that people can really understand the implications of their choices that they're making for their kid.
And we just got to make it easier. It's really
being a parent
so hard being a parent, and like getting them to eat anything is so hard. So of course it's very attractive to use sweet tasting foods because a baby's going to eat it a lot faster, and so like it's literally addictive. It's hyper palatable. So what we really did was focus on very good tasting blends. We made our meat and veggie blends optimized for flavor, and the fat really actually makes the flavor taste a lot better, and so other baby food companies have tried to make some savory or even some meat products that just didn't sell. Babies just didn't like them because they were bland and they were not fatty and the ingredients were low quality. So we focus on these like really good quality meats that taste better, plenty of fat, really good veggie blends, and it makes it easy to feed the kid. Plus it's shelf stable in the, packaged in a shelf stable pouch so they can eat it straight out of the pouch. So we just, we think that parents really, really do want to feed their kids better. They either don't know how or they just really hard, and so our mission is really to make it easier for parents to feed their kids healthy, because every parent I know wants to feed their kids healthy. They either just don't know what healthy means and they think industrial seed oils and fruit are healthy, or they might know, but like Serenity's mentors, like they don't have any other options. Like sometimes I got to give them the pouch. And if there's no pouches like ours to give them, they're going to give them the fruit purees.
As parents, what do you guys do to make healthy, albeit bland foods more palatable and more desirable for your kids?
Yeah.
So we're not afraid to use seasoning and salt. So there's a lot of studies, I've read them. I didn't particularly think they were very good studies, but that say that feeding kids salt under the age of 1 is really a no-no. And I disagree with that. I think the type of salt matters. I think that
they were all done with sodium chloride.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a processed food.
Completely different food.
It's a different food. So we're not afraid to use seasonings in our foods. We use a lot of butter. I don't know any kids that don't like butter. My kid eats butter by the piece. I was like, what do you want for dinner? Butter and bacon and a pickle. I'm like, here you go.
Smear everything in butter, add Himalayan sea salt. That's like the first trick. So
those work really well. We're a mostly dairy-free household because I don't do dairy very well. Joe eats a little bit. So we can't do the kind of traditional mac and cheese type thing, but we do have some lentil noodles, which are actually really great. A company called Bentilia. And I've been really enjoying those with butter and salt. It's sort of a standard kid food that actually has some nutrient density into it.
Yeah.
And
ultimately with kids, it's just about offering it to them a lot. It can take dozens and dozens of offers.
I read somewhere like 100. Sometimes you have to offer it 100 times.
And a lot of parents think, they wouldn't eat, they liked this yesterday, they don't like it today, they must not like it anymore. I've run into that trap where I'm like, she doesn't like olives anymore. And then like I give olive the next day, and then she's like olives again, so it's like constant giving them food, exposing them to new foods, putting putting 6 to 10 different options on their plate at every meal so they get to choose, because they're highly intuitive around what they need, even if, and they're, changes day to day. So it's about just giving them healthy foods all the time and being really clear that if you don't give them hyperpalatable foods, if you don't give them addictive foods, their system can self-regulate and decide what they want.
And then the flavor window is really important. So from a baby's first foods, the 6 months-ish range to about 18 months, that's where they're developing their palate for the rest of their life. So if you're able to introduce foods that taste bitter, salty, sweet, sour, umami, all those different kinds of flavors, and really get them excited and used to eating those kinds of things, then throughout their life, those flavors are going to seem like comfort food, like what they're used to eating. So a lot of our products, like we make broccoli puff, a little snack puff, and it actually tastes like broccoli, and it's got spinach in it, and it has a real umami and, a little bit of that greens kind of bitter taste. And so we're really hoping that this is setting this, these products just launched. So it's hard to get feedback from 10 years from now, but we're really hoping that this helps set the stage to where they're going to like those tastes and those kinds of foods and the mouthfeel of the fat, right? All that kind of thing throughout the rest of their life.
I met a guy the other day who he enjoyed steak, but the only cut that he would ever eat was a filet mignon. He would only eat filet mignons because he's so afraid of fat. And I was like, you're probably not afraid of fat, the texture of fat. You're probably more afraid of like collagenous tissue.
Gristle.
Gristle and like some weird piece that you bit into when you were a kid. I think it's so important to it's like exposure therapy in a way, to expose your kids to a variety of different tastes and textures. Because if you don't, what ends up happening is you get people like that, like people who enter adulthood and spend a significant chunk of their lives with this like 12-year-old boy palate. They only want like white bread, like the most palatable kind of bread for them is like white bread with like some kind of like deli meat on it and ketchup. And it's just it's like their palate is like, it's retarded in the sense that it hasn't been able to develop in the way that an adult palate should.
That's right. And that's what we're going for, is a mature palate. And our 3-year-old, we've been giving her these foods since she was little. Her first foods were ours. I swore I was going to make my own baby food because it's fresh. It's better when it's fresher. 0 times did I ever make my own purees because we had these great ones already in a pouch, right? And one of her favorite foods is olives. She likes okra and, just kind of unusual things for a 3-year-old, I think. She still eats hot dogs, well-sourced hot dogs. And like I said, we make her the lentil noodles and butter, but she also has a little bit more expanded palate.
She was on a scallop fiend for a long time. She
salmon,
scallops and crab, but she goes through phases. She'll drink bone. She already made her liver bone broth. Like she'd puree liver with bone broth, give it to her in a bottle as a supplement to breast milk when she was little, and she drank the crap out of it. So she loved that liver bone broth.
That's awesome. When I was a kid, I was super picky. My mom gave me the nickname Mean Face because I was just like,
oh no.
But but now I've grown up to become an adult that loves to try new things. And that doesn't mean that you can't have preferences and things like that. You can, of course, but I think it's just really important to always be willing to challenge the narrative that you have about your preferences.
I was a picky eater too. Until I was 13, I would eat a hamburger with cheese and ketchup. That's it. Plain cheese pizza. That's it. Like really simple things. And then I will never forget, my grandmother taught me a really important lesson. And she said, Rennie, because that was my nickname when I was a kid. Rennie, what are you going to do when you go over to a friend's house and they serve you something that you don't like? And, a 13-year-old, like friends are everything. And I was like, man, she's right. What am I going to do? And I remember I started with broccoli and I would put tamari sauce all over it to just make it not taste like broccoli. And I started with fish. I would eat, fried junky fish from a fast food place. But I actively learned to eat those things because I wanted to stop being so picky. And it was a choice I made.
There's hope for everyone.
There's hope for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're like, obviously, as you guys mentioned, parenting is super hard, and I'm not a parent, so I'm not even going to pretend to know how difficult it actually is. I mean, I have a concept of how difficult, but I would imagine that if I had, like if I had kids and they were screaming in the backseat of the car and they were starving and I was driving from one, obligation to the next, and I had to get them food, like fast food every once in a while, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. But, as a parent, I think you just have to kind of be able to place that food within the context of their greater, of their diet, of their dietary pattern as a whole. And maybe it's a 90-10 rule. Or an 80-20 rule. I mean, that's fine. Those are great. Most people, most infants, or not infants necessarily, but children, there's this sobering statistic that adults now consume 60% of the calories that we consume come from ultra processed foods. That number is even higher for children. It's about 70-80%. And that's what kids are eating just all the time. So, as long as you can be better than that.
Yeah.
The bar's low.
The
bar's low.
Yeah, we don't judge parents. It's such a hard thing. And, we really want to make it easier. And we don't believe that being super strict or crazy with kids' diets is useful. Yeah. It was just Halloween. Della, was really old enough at 3 to really have fun trick-or-treating and understand Halloween, and ate maybe 5 pieces of candy is my guess she ate, which is like more candy she's ever had in her whole life. And she got a stomach ache, gave her a stomach ache. Mm-hmm. And she was like, my tummy hurts from, she's like, why is my tummy hurt? Because you ate all that candy. She didn't touch the rest of that candy. So just letting them have that experience. She loves cake. She always looks forward to the birthday cake or the wedding cake we let her have, half a piece of cake, little couple bites of cake. It's a special occasion. We're not crazy about gluten and sugar. Cake. Serenity loves cake. So it's just like that, not, turning things into off limits where it's like, this is, you're never allowed to have it, which could lead to binging on it in secret, but also just not having it in the house. I mean, it's pretty easy to just, you keep your house stocked with nutrient-dense foods. If they eat something at a restaurant, they eat something at a friend's house, grandma gives her a cookie, whatever, but even just for adults, that's like, even us, if we go to a restaurant, we might, get something that's not fully paleo or whatever, but it's not in our house. So we get that, like you said, that kind of 90-20. Yep. 90-20 rule.
90-20. The math doesn't quite add up there. Yes. But 90-10, 90-10, 80-20. Yeah. It's all good. Hey guys, quick pause. This episode is brought to you in part by my friends at Element. You know that I'm a religious sauna nut. I also box on a weekly basis. And I just love exercise. And what do you do when you sit in a sauna, box, or perform exercise? You sweat. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Element, my favorite electrolyte powder. Electrolyte powders taste so freaking good. They're sugar-free, they're grain-free, no plastic bottles. Well, I guess grain-free would make sense, but they are gluten-free. They are also artificial sweetener-free. They're sweetened only with stevia. I just love their products, and I consume them almost on a daily basis. It's just the best stuff ever. And their flavors, I couldn't even if I had to pick my favorite flavor, I couldn't even do that because it changes on a week to week basis. One week it's citrus salt, another week it's watermelon salt, mango chili. I mean, is amazing. It's so hard to pick. So rather than spend your money on plastic bottles, which who knows what the liquids contained therein can harbor because they are stored in plastic, get yourself some Element and hydrate yourself properly, loaded with sodium, magnesium, and potassium, which are the electrolytes that you need after a vigorous sweat. This stuff is going to juice you up. If you want to try them, they're offering a free sample pack. All you got to do is head over to drinklmnt.com/geniuslife. That's drink, and then the letters lmnt.com/geniuslife to get a free sample pack, including citrus, raspberry, orange, raw unflavored, and that's it. Yeah. 2 citrus, raspberry, orange, raw unflavored. It's so great. And all you got to do is pay shipping. And if you don't like the product, they're going to refund your shipping. Again, that's drinklmnt.com/geniuslife. You're going to love it. I drink this stuff all the time. And I get tagged in a bajillion Instagram stories of you guys drinking your Element and loving it too. So I say this with confidence. It's my favorite electrolyte powder there is. Check it out and you won't be sorry. drinklmnt.com/geniuslife. You guys mentioned that discovering the paleo diet was really was transformative in terms of your guys' health. Can you lay out the tenets? Like what are some of the like founding principles of the paleo diet that you guys adopted that helped you see such success?
Yes. So for me, so I read Rob Wolf's book and Mark Sisson's book, and this was 11 years ago. So it was kind of the early days. And I had studied anthropology in undergrad. And once I read the introduction to Rob Wolf's The Paleo Solution about how humans had been eating the same diet for almost our entire existence through evolution, and only recently we've changed to an agricultural diet. And after that, our health has become much worse. That was enough for me. So basically what I did right away, so I was in graduate school at the time and I didn't have a whole lot of time to do research on anything other than what I was studying. But I went gluten-free right away because my stomach was killing me and I didn't know what else to do. So I went gluten-free and grain-free right away. That worked really well. Then I cut out legumes and beans, and took me 2 years to finally admit that dairy was not something that my body loved. So instead, I was just really focused on eating more vegetables. I mean, who couldn't eat more vegetables? Lots of people, right? Most Americans. In fact, I could probably still use more veggies. So lots of veggies, and then clean meats. So the sources of the meats is pretty important. We used to have an uncured bacon flavor in our line that is no longer, but we're working to bring it back. And the pork farmer that we worked with, he had pasture raised pork, which is very difficult to find. It's actually very difficult to do, but he did some studies. He mailed a Walmart pork chop into the lab, and he mailed one of his pork chops into the lab. And the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was unbelievably better in his pork than in the Walmart one. So really focusing on the source is super important. So I started just researching the sources of my meats, buying wild caught salmon, buying as much grass-fed beef that I could afford at the time. And then a little bit of fruit and a little bit of nuts. I would do a little bit of that here and there. Right now I'm going more low carb. So my fruit is almost nil at this point, but that's kind of what it was. Mostly veggies, clean meats, healthy fats, a little bit of fruit and nuts.
What I really liked about paleo was it's focused on what to eat, not what not to eat. All these diets and vegetarianism and veganism, they all focus on eliminating stuff. And that's where people always want to go. Like, what can I not eat? But everybody knows you can be vegetarian and live on cheese pizza all day long, right? It's just not necessarily mean you're healthy to just not eat certain classes of food. We know keto people that, eat cheese all day long, right? It's not healthy. So it's really not what not to eat. It was about focusing on nutrient density. Like, what are the most foods that the human body needs the most of, which we know now are, well-sourced animal products, vegetables, fats, and then if you eat other stuff, fine, but don't have it be the cornerstone of your diet. Like grain, if you eat some grain, if you can tolerate dairy, fine. Just don't let it, if you're really focusing on optimal nutrition, or you have a health problem, or you're raising a baby, so forth, focus on the nutrient dense first, fill your plate with that. And then if there's, you want to have a snack or you want to have a treat, whatever. And it's not about being guilty or being like purist or
dogmatic,
or punishing yourself for wanting to have, some grain or sugar or whatever. And then also that it tastes good. Meat and veggies taste great. High fat tastes awesome. When you go to a fancy restaurant, basically what they're going to serve you is paleo. If they gave you a plate of fruit and rice, you'd be like, excuse me, send this back, and they're going to give you our grass-fed beef with sweet potato and kale. That's the ingredients to this baby food pouch. That's what you get at a fancy restaurant. That's like your most gourmet
night out.
They also happen to taste awesome, and healthy food doesn't have to taste bad, right? People think it's bland or it's boring. I think,
it's like cardboard.
The low fat vegetarian movement really made it seem like eating grass was healthy, and it's like, it's not, right? Like, actually healthy food tastes great if you do it right. And you don't have to deny yourself to eat healthy. In fact, the healthiest foods are already really, really tasty.
Absolutely. A steak with some veggies and a sweet potato sounds like something I would eat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
is. That's my favorite comment when we do, well, back in the day when we were doing lots of tastings and trade shows and things, my favorite comment from people was, oh, I'd eat that, or that's not too gross, or,
It's not gross.
it's not gross. That's surprising.
Baby food is usually gross. If it's not sugar,
Mhm.
it's kind of nasty, and ours are actually quite tasty.
Yeah. I mean, I bought my cat like this dry food the other day. That's like wild salmon, all like, organic, pastured, everything, veggies. There's no grain, no potato flour, no byproducts. I'm like, I would eat that
Right?
as a snack.
Did you try it?
Well, because it's for a cat that it's like probably very high in protein.
Mhm.
I didn't try it. Maybe I
I'm
will
glad
for
about
on Instagram live. Or something.
Yeah. All right. I'll watch you. I'll watch for it.
I mean, who knows? But that's so cool. So, I mean, the question that I think a lot of parents are going to have, when you're buying for quality, sometimes that can drive the price tag up a little bit.
That's right.
Do you guys have any tips in terms of how to economize? You guys are a young family. There's a lot of young families out there. Times are tough out there. It's a tough world. What are some ways that you guys like make it work from a financial standpoint, buying such high quality for your kids?
Well, buying in bulk is really useful. So we just bought a giant stand-up freezer, and Joe bought a quarter of a cow. Half a cow. So it by the pound is much lower from a cost perspective. It's still really high quality. It's locally sourced. It's grass-fed. And we just filled our freezer up with it. So Costco is also a good place. They actually have some decent sourcing. You can get organic chicken, you can get grass-fed beef there, and a lot of organic veggies. And then we like cooking in bulk too. So if you're buying in bulk, it's convenient to get a giant, we have the biggest Instant Pot, and we'll cook up 3 pounds of chicken breast and a tortilla soup kind of base,
Wow.
and then freeze a whole bunch of it. And then you've got some for today, some for next week, to where, cooking when you have a family also takes a lot of time and energy.
I think there's a lot.
You guys mentioned that you have like 9 different things on the plate for your kid at any one time. How do you guys make that work with such busy schedules?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's just, a piece of pickled okra, a pre-boiled egg,
carrots.
some lunch meat that's cut up, right? Some baby carrots, and then whatever we're eating. So it's like there's sort of those things. We do batch cook a lot to save time. Some freeze, some just eat on throughout the week. But I think cost with food is really a mindset. We have artificially cheap food in this country. Like we have cheated.
Subsidized.
Yeah, we've cheated the planet. We've cheated nutrition to save money. And now food is artificially cheap. We can survive on it, but it's, our health is paying a huge price for that. The planet is paying a huge price for it. So in my opinion, what you don't spend on food, you're going to pay in healthcare costs, if not many times over. And, it's just, how do you put a price on optimal nutrition, on not being sick? I don't know how often you get sick, but when I'm sick, it's like, if I could have paid $1,000 to not be sick, I was like, would pay it. Right. And then you think about cancers and learning disabilities and emotional and mental disorders. And, 1 out of 5 kids is, 1 out of 3 kids is diagnosed obese. 1 out of 5 is diagnosed with a social or emotional disorder by the age of 16, and so it's like, diabetes, there's all these really awful conditions that are highly diet related that spending the right amount of money on food will prevent. It is more expensive, but we just have to think of it. It's like the real cost. So
food is medicine, right?
Our products are the real cost of food. And we've done our best to make it convenient to, get the price to an affordable place. But ultimately it is double. Our purchase costs double the next most expensive fruit puree.
Yeah, if you're getting applesauce versus steak.
Yeah, it's going to cost more.
That
right?
happens.
Versus steak versus grass-fed steak.
Yeah.
So paying more for better sourcing. But again, it's 80-20 rule like we're talking about, right? So, it's just like focus on the most nutritious, spend what it costs for the most nutritious foods, and then you supplement with lower cost foods here and there is fine. It's just really, it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Talk to me about the difference between infant formula and what I've seen marketed as toddler formula. Are they the same? Are they different? Are they interchangeable? What's the deal?
It's a great question. So, obviously breast milk is the ideal food for babies. That's what babies, really need ideally till at least age 2. there's no problem going all the way till age 4, depending on the mom and what they're willing to do. So breast milk is super key. Now, there's lots of issues with breastfeeding. It's very challenging. It's very hard. There's a lot of myths about it. So a lot of moms end up wanting or needing to supplement with formula before that 6-month mark where they can eat food. Our baby weaned herself at 9 months old, where she'd already started eating foods, but then just stopped breastfeeding at 9 months for whatever reason. And we, needed to continue to supplement, and just regular milk was not as nutritious as we wanted to give. So we had looked at formulas for at that point. And didn't like anything that was on the market. And so there's ultimately the toddler formula market is largely a result of the FDA's restrictions on regulations of infant formula. We have the most complicated restrictions in the world that we know of. It makes it very hard for new innovative companies like us to sell an infant formula because they require these infant feeding studies that take 3 years and several $1 million to do in order to become infant formula certified in the US. Europe doesn't have those standards.
Wow.
We haven't updated the US hasn't updated their infant formula standards in several decades. 1980.
Yeah, the Infant Formula Act of 1980.
1980 was the last time they updated the standards. So the current infant feeding, the infant formula standards are from 1980. So you imagine how much nutrition has changed. Europe updated theirs last year, right? So they're constantly updating them. So European formula is naturally higher quality because there's less barriers to entry for newer companies to innovate. Their standards are a lot better. So our formula that we launched, we have this grass-fed whole milk A2 formula, and it's launched as a toddler formula. We're not allowed to recommend it to infants. We call it a toddler formula, and we put on there that it's for 12 months and up because the FDA says in order to call it an infant formula or recommend it for babies under 12 months, you have to have completed these infant feeding studies, which we are working on gathering the resources to begin. But it, like I said, takes 3 years. So it'll be 3 years till we can recommend this product for infants. Now, if you look at all the nutritional requirements for infant formula, you look at Europeans' infant formula standards, our formula meets all of them. So it's really up to a mom at this point or a dad or any caregiver to decide what I want to feed my baby, to do the research, to talk to their health provider if they're confused, to look at the regulations and decide. So it's really up to any parent to decide what to feed their baby. We're not allowed to call it infant formula or recommend it. But if you do the research and compare our formula to others, you're going to see that it meets all those standards and is better than any of the infant formulas out there. It's better, much better fat sources. The other ones all have industrial seed oil. Ours has no industrial seed oil. It's 8 different fat sources. So this really well-rounded fat profile that all came from extensive research on breast milk. We worked with Dr. Sarah Valentine to map the nutritional profile of breast milk. She studied over 200 research papers globally on breast milk to look at what the optimal composition of breast milk is and how can we mimic that. She looked at hundreds of ingredients, and we worked with her and all kinds of scientists to piece together this recipe that is the closest to breast milk of any other formula ever created. In terms of the A2 protein, beta-casein protein, which is the same beta-casein protein as is in breast milk. Most other cow's milk is A1 protein, so genetic mutation. So ours is exclusively A2.
Which is easier to digest than A1.
Yeah, exactly. It's more natural to humans, more like breast milk. We use the whole milk. Almost no formula is whole milk. They use non-fat milk. They take the fat out because it's cheaper, and then they add the fat back in with industrial seed oil. So we keep all the milk fat in there, add in other great fats like cacao,
cocoa
butter, olive, coconut, like really, really great, fat sources. We really upgraded the vitamin profile so that the added vitamins are the most bioavailable.
We use methylated B vitamins wherever we can.
instead of the traditional folic acid, which is can be inflammatory. So across the board, we include fiber. Almost no baby food formula has fiber.
And one of my favorite parts about it is the carb source. So, like Joe said, the calories from breast milk are about half fat and half carbs. And almost every single formula has a junky carb source, but we use lactose, organic lactose, 100%. We don't have any fillers like maltodextrin, no corn syrup solids, nothing that's non-nutritive. Everything that we've added ingredient wise is not just to meet a macronutrient profile. It's also to meet the micronutrient profile. It's to meet the fatty acid profile. And it's something I'm really, really proud of.
And there's no reason not to give it to toddlers. It's not like you can't give a toddler formula or a toddler formula. Like it is in what we've created is milk plus, right? So like people say, well, they say just to give whole milk to toddlers. Well, like, if you can find regeneratively farmed grass-fed A2 whole milk in your grocery store, great. But most people can't find that. So even just for that reason alone, our formula is a little better than just the milk you buy. But then all those other, vitamins and nutrients that I mentioned are superior to milk. And so it is a great food to continue to give toddlers as they grow.
And the formula in particular, we've been getting reviews from parents that are saying that their kid just can't tolerate cow's milk. It's got a different weight to casein ratio, and it is a lot harder to digest, frankly, than our product, because we've carefully constructed the whey to casein ratio and
whey to casein ratio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we're getting a lot of feedback from parents who maybe have kids that are a little underweight, that they're trying to get more nutrition into as a toddler. And so that's one of the big uses for toddler formula is for either kids who can't digest regular cow's milk or goat's milk, and kids that just need a little bit more calories from really good sources.
Yeah. If your doctor says to take Pediasure, do our formula. Don't go, it's an alternative to the Pediasure kind of fortified beverages that are all nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the formulas that I've seen, first of all, they're put out by these huge pharmaceutical companies, right? Yeah. That take this reductionist approach. It's like they've created Soylent for your baby. Essentially, it's like this totally the term nutritionism, they think that they've broken down what a baby needs into the exact micronutrient formula, but then to source the ingredients to hit those various thresholds, they're sourcing, as you said, corn syrup solids, maltodextrin, canola oil, soybean oil. So that when you zoom out on paper, maybe it vaguely, if you squint your eyes a little bit, so that they blur, it looks maybe vaguely like a suitable food for a human neonate, right? But what's so great about what you guys want, I'm so happy to get behind it, is that it's whole food, right? It's like whole food as nature intended, pureed. It's amazing. Hey guys, I told you I'd be back. I just want to drop quickly the discount code that you guys can use if you want to try Serenity Kids. All you got to do is go to myserenitykids.com and enter Genius at checkout. You're going to get 20% off of your first one-time order plus free shipping. Again, myserenitykids.com, code Genius for 20% off. They've got amazing flavors: free range chicken with organic peas and carrots, grass-fed beef with organic kale and sweet potato, turkey bolognese. I mean, it all sounds like stuff that I would want to eat, which I said in the episode. Check them out, myserenitykids.com, code Genius. Get it.
Vitamins, they're actually really new. They're only 100 years old. We didn't even know about vitamins before the scientific method in the early 1900s, right? So I think that what we know about nutrition is the teeny tiniest slice of the pie that you've ever seen, the smallest little piece of pie you've ever had. I think it is so small. And we've worked with people in the industry who come from those big companies, and they truly do believe, their hearts are in the right place. They do believe they found the answer. But like Joe said, we haven't updated our regulations, and therefore no research has been done, or at least not in a big, meaningful way, in 25 years. And it is, it's so sad to think that, it's just a mindset. It's factory processed foods versus whole foods. Clearly the whole foods are the better choice. And it just baffles me how people can think otherwise.
Yeah, it goes back to the paleo argument. I mean, we've been studying food for 100 years. Breaking down its nutrients and trying to replicate them. But we've been eating for 500,000 years on this planet. And the 95% plus of that was spent hunter-gathering, eating plants that we foraged, animals that we hunted, bugs that we found, like that was what we ate. So rather than try to say, hey, what's the science? How do we break this down and control it? More of a surrendered approach of like, hey, we're humans. How did humans live? How did we survive this long? What are the foods that feel right to our bodies, right? That taste good, that are intuitively the right things. And that's where I think the paleo movement really wins, is like looking at a different kind of approach.
And the paleo movement has kind of ignored like the needs of infants and toddlers. Until you guys.
Right.
It's just like, that's what we found.
Well, we were at Paleo FX, a conference in Austin in 2016, when we started talking about having a family, and I kind of started getting like fuzzy and maternal. And I'm like, Joe, let's go find the baby stuff here. We looked at every booth. I found a chiropractor that worked on pregnant women, but that was the only thing that we found even remotely close to for kids. I mean, there was granola bars and things, better granola bars and snacks and things, but we didn't find anything. And I went up to the head of Paleo FX, because I used to work for them, actually. It's here in Austin. And I said, Michelle, where's the baby stuff? And she said, I ask myself that question every year. I wonder, when is it coming? And then the following year, we were there.
Yeah.
And
as soon as we started it, the paleo movement got way behind us. Yeah. I mean, everybody we talked to was so ready for that to be brought to babies and toddlers, and just nobody done it yet.
In fact, we talked to 3 or 4 different people who had made plans to start a baby food company. They're like, well, I bought this URL. Do you want this one? Or, I've got some research here.
I got cavebaby.com. Do you want that? We're like, I don't think we're going to call it Cave Baby, but thanks. Yeah.
And you just called it your name. I mean, you don't get easier to remember than that. Yeah.
That's right. They said make it personal, and Joe Kids wasn't quite as poetic.
Joe Kids.
We just used my name. It worked.
I love it. What are some of your favorite flavors like that seem to be doing the best?
Good question. Well, our OG flavors are doing the best right now.
So the grass-fed beef I held up earlier is my favorite. It's always my favorite. It's Della's current favorite again. She's gone around back to it again. Our Della. The free-range chicken with organic pea and carrot.
That's one of my favorites.
Is the top favorite. Like everybody.
Wow.
This is like the best.
It was the
seller.
first one we ever created in our kitchen. We delivered it around to our friends in town, and we filled our own pouches with a pouch filler from Amazon. Yeah. And babies loved it.
We have a new line of bone broth pouches that have bone broth, meat, veggies, and functional herbs. So the flavors are a lot richer. So this is our turkey bolognese.
That's my favorite of those.
This is a real super popular one. Della also really likes this one.
So this one has green pea, free range turkey bone broth, pastured turkey, tomato paste, olive oil, garlic, Himalayan sea salt, basil, and oregano, all organic stuff.
Sounds so good. So you just open it up and babies
they just drink it.
They drink it. They squeeze it in like
squeeze it in.
For little bitty babies, you might want to try it on a spoon, just because it really helps their mouth to form all the muscles properly, eating from a spoon actually versus sucking from a straw. So with early young infants, you want to try the spoon feeding at first.
Yeah. But as an older kid, they can feed themselves, which they love. They can eat it. And I love it because I don't have to sit there and feed them. But she'll eat as many of these as we let her eat. She's probably eating about 4 or 5 a day right now at age 3. So she's well past the need for purees, but they just make such a great snack.
Convenient.
She loves them. They're nostalgic for her. And the ingredients are so great that it's like, why not just let her eat them? I mean, if it was going to do a packaged food.
And then hand me that Puffs one.
And then,
this one's my favorite.
I made
Puff. Pumpkin and cinnamon, pumpkin spice pops. Woo, woo.
Yeah.
Wow. So, adults can eat that too, right? Like, are they tasty to the adult palate?
They actually are. They're pretty mild, so they're not gonna like punch you in the mouth like a Dorito or something.
But they're very satisfying.
They're probably not as salty, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not as salty.
But they're real nice crunch. I mean, the texture of the puffs are great because it's a crunchy snack that also melts in your mouth if you don't have teeth. So for a baby who doesn't have much teeth, they can still eat them and they'll just kind of dissolve, or like a Cheerio kind of. But for us, we can eat them and they're crunchy and it's just easy. It's very easy to eat.
In my opinion, for the adult palate, I think that the tomato mushroom bone broth puffs
We added bone broth
are
to these puffs, by
particularly
the way.
nice because
Yeah.
they've got that umami flavor and they got some protein in there.
I like the broccoli spinach puff.
That's
This is
his
my
favorite.
favorite puff. It's like got that really rich greens flavor.
Mhm.
I think it's the most potent of the flavors that
It's
we have.
strong.
The
Strong.
babies actually really like it.
They
So it
do.
really introduces that flavor, and the bone broth, that's that rich
Umami.
flavor in there too. And we're the first ones to snackify bone broth. Nobody's put bone broth in a snack before. So we're all very proud
It
of
tastes
that.
so good. Why not?
Yeah. And we do have a line of veggie products. So we do also these vegetable fat products. This is the squashes. It's kabocha squash, butternut squash, and pumpkin with olive oil. And so it's this interesting carb fat combo that tastes really a great way to introduce the taste of vegetables, because the meat veggie combos, the meat can be a little more forward. The veggies are really strong flavors here. And it makes a really nice side dish. She's eating like a hot dog. This is Della's favorite is the squashes. The roots, I think the roots is my favorite. It's, sweet potato, carrot, beet, and olive oil.
And those ones are nice. I mean, I think
Adults like these a lot.
as an adult, if I need a veggie snack, if I'm traveling or something, and I'm not going to eat the garbage in the airport anymore. So I just snack on those, and those ones are a little more palatable for adults than like pureed meat.
I like the bone broth
Kinda freaky.
ones. When I had my mouth surgery, I ate bone broth ones. I keep them in my night table. If I wake up hungry and I need a snack, I just squeeze the turmeric chicken's my favorite. Squeeze the
Yeah,
turmeric
that's a good
chicken pouch down and go back to bed.
And like competing products just have like added sugar, unhealthy oils. Is that
so
kind of
it's-
like the lay of the land?
It's basically fruit and grain. I
Yeah.
mean, so in the pouches, you've got fruit with some vegetables. So about roughly a quarter vegetables, 3/4 fruit is basically the aisle if you don't look at ours, with no fat, no meat, essentially, pretty much zero. And then ours is the opposite. It's all vegetables and meat, no fruits, no grains. Once you get off the pouches, you start to really see more grain and more added sugar. So the puffs, the bars, the teething biscuits, the melties, that's where you start to see lots of straight up cane sugar or fruit sugar used in such a way that's basically added sugar, like it's just the sugar extracted. And then lots of grain. You see a lot of rice, which we now know is very high in arsenic. There's been a lot of controversy with how much arsenic is on the baby aisle because of their over reliance on rice as a carb source. So the bars, the other puffs, the infant cereals, the teething biscuits, they're almost all rice. So we were really the first grain-free snack in that segment. And we're working on creating a lot more of those to replace and upgrade all of the other foods. But again, for us, it's not just about taking out the grain. It's about adding in nutrient density. And I think that's what some companies don't quite get. They're like, oh, I can replace the rice with sorghum or quinoa. And it's like, sounds better than rice, but it's like, but there's really still no nutrition. It's still just a filler. Maybe it's lower in arsenic, but when we launch our products, that's like, it's 100% nutrition. Everything, the puff is vegetables and bone broth and some herb, like some spices. Like that's it. People are like way more into that than like a sorghum puff.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. When they will, they'll present like gluten-free versions of whatever junk foods that are predominantly rice flour. And then you'll see like the paleo approved versions that are basically the same thing, but with the rice flour removed and cassava flour substituted. And it's ultimately the same. I mean, it's like the same product for the most part.
Yeah. We were really sad. We went to Expo West the first year we went, 2017 or something.
It's a big food trade show.
It's the health food trade show out in Anaheim every year. And we were walking around and we were like, man, we're starving. Where can we go get some food? So we couldn't find any place to
get food
lunch.
at a health food trade show.
And we were talking to
couldn't eat.
Yeah. And we talked to some strangers that were there. They're like, oh, aren't you so full? I've been eating all day.
We're
and I'm like,
no.
You've been eating this garbage all day?
If you took out the sugar, the grain, and the coffee, basically the whole show was sugar, grain, and coffee in some different combinations of that. Some were sugar, grain, coffee. It was crazy. It's like just nuts. So now it's gotten a lot better. Epic Bar brought meat back to health food. I mean, really, 5 years ago, it was hard to get meat in health food stores. And so, maybe 10. So it's like really bringing meat back has been huge. And people were like, still say like, it's so bold of you to have meat on your packaging in a health food store. We're like, it's not really bold. It's 500,000 years, like that's what we survived on. Like, it's weird to me that they still think it's bold, but there's still so much vegetarian, vegan stuff, all this new innovation trying to make meat-free products. And it's like, why, it's like, that's not,
it's just not, right that's not what we,
just more processed, more fake, low nutrition.
It's basically the equivalent of human pet food.
Oh, yeah. Gross. You're right.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. And pet food isn't impervious from this push towards plant-based diets either. There's a company that just closed a huge round. They're making like it's vegan food for dogs.
Wow.
You couldn't get away with that for a cat because everybody knows cats are obligate carnivores, but now you have this whole cohort of people putting their dogs on plant-based diets.
There's a vegan cat movement. Like when I was looking at recipes for my cat, there were like all these like, you need to supplement with these amino acids and we ship them to you and they're plant-based aminos. And it was crazy. Like,
see, I thought that was a joke. Is that really happening?
It's for real. People are that crazy.
Wow.
Like to take a straight up carnivore and mimic their diet. And you know what? Their cats probably don't die, right? Like it's about optimal
quality
diet, right? Like quality of life. Maybe they get sick eventually, but or whatever, but like you can keep an animal alive. We're very resilient. And it's just a matter of what you're measuring, what you're optimizing. The vegans I know all that have been vegan 10 plus years all have some kind of health issue. Like I've yet to see vegans that are like, I'm perfect optimal health, whereas the paleo people I know are like, they could fucking push a train, like they're hardcore.
Yeah. It's a farce, like the push towards, and certainly some people are doing it well. There's some great examples of people doing it well. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're on a plant-based diet and you feel like it's working well for you, by all means, keep doing, keep it up. But yeah, it's definitely not optimal. And I mean, just the fact that it's an important data point that granted, it's just one essential nutrient that we know of that you're not getting on a vegan diet that you have to supplement with, but a diet that creates any kind of deficiency like that's an important piece of information that I think we underappreciate. And then we try to play this cat and mouse game with other nutrients, perhaps the conditionally essential nutrients that we know you're not getting as much of. But as you mentioned, we've only been studying nutrition for the past 100 years. We think we have it all figured out. Like, how arrogant can you be? We don't.
That's right. I agree. Yeah. And, there are no wild populations of people that have ever been vegetarian.
Yeah.
So
there's no documentation of some societies
that's right. At some point, they've eaten at least insects. So just 20% of their diet. So
there are Inuit communities that only eat meat. You can see communities that survived on nothing but meat, but there aren't any that survived on only plants. Like they required that animal.
So there's no evidence of reproduction working, right, and sustaining the species on such a limited range of nutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're an adult, eat whatever the hell you want. But if you're in charge of a child or a dog or a cat or any other organism, let them eat their biologically appropriate diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And if you're standing in the way of that willfully, you're a criminal.
I agree.
That's how I feel.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Super important.
Yeah.
aligned in so many ways. Well, thank you guys so much for what it is that you're doing. It's really great. I'm a fan and a supporter. And, I look forward to the day that I have a kid of my own that I can feed them packets of Serenity Kids and be like, I played a tiny role in helping this company.
Yeah, we look forward to it too. We'll send you a whole bunch of all of our new stuff when the day comes.
Yeah. In the meantime, any of your friends, family members, we're happy to help hook them up too. So
where can listeners connect with you guys on social media? And I guess more importantly, where can they find your products?
Totally. So we have a great website, myserenitykids.com. All our products available there, including a really great subscription option. So just auto delivered. We're on Amazon as well. So all products are available on Amazon. We have a store locator to find us in